all yours.
Okay, so thanks everyone for being here tonight. Sorry to take away from your FHE. We're trying to address a really big issue in Hawaii that a lot of people are not aware about at the time. So we're going to start with the same-sex marriage bill and how we got here and where we are today with same-sex in Hawaii. So where are we now and how did we get here?
Use this side on the arrows.
So in 1998, Hawaii adopted a constitutional amendment that at the time people believed to have defined marriage between a man and a woman. Next. What it actually did is it gave legislature the power to define marriage between the lines. A lot of people who were unaware of this at the time voted believing, we're voting on this amendment, it's going to be man and woman, it's taken care of. What they didn't know is that it gave it the power to the legislature to reserve marriages between a man and a woman. Other people who were aware said that it felt like a lose-lose situation. If they voted one way, then there would be gay marriage. If they voted the other way, then the power goes to the legislature. So that's where we were back in '98. Next. In 2011, we had the passing of civil unions. Next. The legislature passed the Civil Unions Bill in 2010, and Governor Lingle vetoed it. She didn't want it. And the first act that Governor Abercrombie did as governor is he passed this bill. Next. This year in 2013, in June, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that a clause in the Defense of Marriage Act of 96 was unconstitutional. And what that clause was is that it reserved federal benefits from same-sex couples. So earlier this year, the Supreme Court ruled that that was unconstitutional and they can't be discriminated from getting federal benefits. Next. So that's where we are now. This year, everything building up from the 90s up until 2013, the Supreme Court ruling says it's unconstitutional and some feel that there's a need to redefine marriage. Next. So next week, exactly 1 week from today, we're going to be having a special session. Each year we have what's called a regular session. And here we have the legislature to vote on bills that they want passed to become laws. Next. So a special session can be called by the governor or by a 2/3 vote by majority rule from the House and the Senate. We've had several special sessions before. The notable ones was back in 2001 and 9/11 in regards to a budget crisis. And it was voted on by the House and Senate with a majority rule. And we had it again in 2007 in terms of the super ferry, again by majority rule. This is the first time that a special session is being called unilaterally by a governor here in Hawaii. Next. So a special session limits the voice of the people. We'll get to that next. So during a regular session, the process can go somewhere between 90 to 120 days. And that's roughly 4 months. It's a lot of time for there to be committee hearings. There's a chance, 4 to 5 committee hearings, chances for people to bear testimonies, chances for public amendments, and there are amendments. In the special session that they are planning to have next week, they're trying to push it through in 5 days. 5 days is the minimum amount of time required for a special session. So what's usually done in 4 to 5 months, they're trying to squeeze through in 5 days. And what this does is it limits the amount of committee hearings that the bill will be presented in front of, and it limits the amount of testimonies that people can go in and speak their voice and what they think about the bill. So this special session is limiting the process from 4 to 5 months where people can talk, thoughts can be addressed, and concerns can be amended for the bill. By having it in 5 days, we are severely limited from doing any of that. And there will be no public amendments. Next. So I'm going to go ahead and break down some of Abercrombie's FAQs. I don't know if you guys have seen it online, but he's got it posted up on his website. I'm going to start with question 8 and 9. These are in regards to the religious exemption, religious freedom. This is where a lot of people might get more attention. So question number 8. Under the September 9th version of the bill proposed by the administration, can a member of the clergy be required to solemnize a marriage between two individuals of the same sex if the clergy member objects to such marriages on religious grounds? Next. This is Governor Abercrombie's answer to that question. No, the Constitution requires us to be respectful of religious beliefs, and this bill has been drafted with that intent. Under the bill, members of clergy are not required to solemnize any marriages and may refuse to do so for any reason, including any objection on religious grounds. This bill expressly provides that a clergy member who refuses to perform a marriage cannot be sued, fined, or subject to any civil action because they refuse to perform a marriage. So if you guys look at page 2 in your packets the second page, not page 2, section 572-F. That's where it talks about the clergy members and their exemptions.
In the middle of the second page.
Yeah, so on the last paragraph of the second page, it talks about refusal to solemnize marriage in regards to ministers, priests, or officers of religious denomination. And if you read it, it says that they are exempt from being sued, fined, or any civil action if they refuse to solemnize marriage. This is the exact wording that was in the Civil Unions Bill, and that's what they're trying to say, that, we won't be affected. So this religious exemption for the clergy, for individuals, is only in regards to solemnizing the marriage. So if someone wants to renew their vows, and they come to one of our priests or one of our bishops, anyone, to renew their vows, they won't be protected. They're only protected if they refuse solemnization. But in regards to this question, it says, will they be required to solemnize next? The answer is no, we're good. For the most part, bishop, rabbis, priests, ministers, any denomination, they're fine from solemnizing, only from solemnizing. Next. Okay, this next question is where a lot of people have been really concerned with the wording of the bill. Question number 9. Under the bill, can a church be required to open its place of worship for a wedding ceremony between two individuals of the same sex if the church usually restricts wedding ceremonies to its own members? So let's go ahead and turn to the next page of the bill. And this is where a lot of people are concerned about building usage. So in the first clause, G-A, it reads, a religious organization shall not be required to make a religious facility owned or leased by the religious organization available for solemnization of a particular marriage, provided that. So that statement, provided that, means it requires all three next. The religious facility is regularly used by the religious organizations for its religious purposes. The solemnization of marriage pursuant to this chapter, the religious organization restricts use of the religious facility to its members. And the religious organization does not operate the religious facility as a for-profit business. So those are the three requirements to be protected. You can't get sued, you can't get fined. So how many of our religious facilities are regularly used by the religious organization for religious purposes? A lot of people would argue, all of them. We always, we use our buildings a lot. It says regularly used for religious purposes. Do we play basketball at the Tabernacle? Is that a religious activity? That can be interpreted as not being able to qualify to be exempt from persecution because it's not regularly used for religious purposes. Second, the religious organization restricts use of the religious facility to its members. So thinking about temple, how's that? Is that restricted only to us? Yeah. What about the chapels? Do we restrict chapel usage only to our members? No. In fact, many churches, most of the churches I know, will actually have, open to the public. Come eat, come learn. And that's the way that they get people to come and learn about their teaching, their doctrine. And by doing that, you don't qualify to be exempt. And the last one, the religious organization does not operate the religious facility as a for-profit business. The Mormon Church, are we for-profit? No. What about Catholic Church? Yeah. A lot of other churches, especially on a small island where, it's pretty expensive to live here. To get a business going, to get a church, it's pretty expensive. A lot of them, I would say, are for-profit and need that support just to get by. And on the last section, if you continue on to section C, it says, nothing in this section shall be interpreted to exempt the owner or operator of any religious facility from the requirements of Chapter 489 if the religious facility is a place of public accommodation as defined in section 49-2. Next. Okay, so what was all that for? The public accommodation. Read here, the place of public accommodation as defined in 49-2 means a business, accommodation, refreshment, entertainment, recreation, or transport facility, everything, of any kind whose goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, or accommodation, again, kind of very broad, that's about everything, are extended, offered, sold, or otherwise made available to the general public as customers, clients, or visitors. And the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission has already stated that they will be defining churches as public accommodations. So, section C, I'm going to read it again. Nothing in this section shall be interpreted to exempt the owner or operator of any religious facility from the requirements of 49 if the religious facility is a place of public accommodation. So basically, if you are a public accommodation, those exemptions, which were very narrow already in section A, don't apply to you. So they're saying, we're giving you all these protections. They were narrow already. Then they're saying, if you're a public accommodation, which churches will be, you don't get those exemptions. So they give us very narrow exemptions, and then they say you're not even going to get them. Except that it's worded in a way that people will not be able to understand that. Next. So again, what was that for? Why would they even put that? They want it to look good. This misleads the general public, as well as the less willing to get involved religious entities, from understanding the threats and from taking action. The general public, a lot of them think, there's religious exemptions. Why? There's churches, we've talked to other people that said, no, our churches said we're fine, there's religious exemptions in there. We don't need to get involved. Some of the legislators may believe that the exemptions protect religious groups. Some of them, they don't actually read it. They may not actually read it. They have their advisors and other people talk to them and tell them. And they trust that. They may not know, their advisors may not know. Some of them just might not know about this. And because of that, they're backing the bill. Next. Okay, so before I go on, that's the concerns in terms to religion and religious groups. The thing that we're trying to get people not to do is to write to your legislator saying, the Bible says this, Bible says that, our church does this and we believe that. You can't do that. That's not going to speak to them and they're not going to listen to you. They're going to think you're a religious fanatic and put your legs off to the side. I talk about this bill is about not discriminating, right? So you can't do that. So what you can do is you can fight the process. And that's what we're going to be talking about next. Why can't the legislature address this issue during a regular session? Abercrombie's response, his words, a remedy delayed is a remedy denied. Holding a special session will allow the legislature to truly focus on this important issue of equality and equity without having to divert attention to the hundreds of other bills introduced during a regular session. Next. What? Next. Hawaii is not in violation of any laws. Because of the Supreme Court ruling that the DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, is unconstitutional, Hawaii is not in violation of any laws at the moment. Next. None of the other 34 states which have not passed same-sex marriage are rushing to have a special session to address this issue. Next. The Supreme Court ruling does not mean that we need to redefine marriage. No matter what the media or what the local government faces are trying to say, we don't have to redefine. There's no need to make any changes. Next. Abercrombie says, he wants them to put this in a special session so they can focus on the important issues. So does anyone here believe that the conditions of our roads are less important than same-sex marriage? Does anyone believe that public schools and their fundings are any less important than same-sex marriage? He's trying to say that this is an important issue that needs to be addressed above everything else in regular session. Next. One thing that you're going to hear is they're saying it's for taxes. The clause that was named unconstitutional in the Defense Against Marriage was in regards to federal benefits, taxes. Abercrombie's trying to say that, if we pass this law now, then people will still be able, same-sex couples can get married in the time between the next tax comes around, and they'll be able to get those federal benefits. So next. So look at some statistics. Next. Since the passage of civil unions, there have been, to my knowledge, 916 civil unions in the state of Hawaii. So that's over 3 years, we've had 916. Next. 916 couples equals 1,832 individuals. Next. The population of Hawaii is 1.392 million people. Next. 1,832 out of such million is less than 1/5 of 1%. Over the course of 3 years, the benefits have only affected less than 1/5 of 1%. Abercrombie is trying to say that in the next 7 to 8 months, we're going to have more people coming in to get married for same-sex marriage, that it's actually going to make a difference come federal tax time. Next. Benefits. Next. Because of the Supreme Court ruling that made federal benefits no longer restricted against same-sex couples, federal benefits are currently available to same-sex couples as they are to heterosexual couples. Next. It's up to the federal government to decide whether a civil union qualifies for federal benefits. So we have civil unions for same-sex couples. Nothing is preventing the federal government from granting them the benefits of marriage other than the fact that they aren't. The federal government can grant civil unions those federal benefits. They just don't. Nothing's stopping them. Next. The federal government recognizes same-sex marriages from other states. So like I was saying, it's currently available to same-sex couples. In states that have same-sex marriage already, you can get married and you'll get those benefits in that state. If you go to another state that does not recognize same-sex marriage, you will still get those federal benefits. Those benefits are available, and again, the local media is trying to seem like there's no way for them to get these benefits unless we make same-sex marriage legal here in Hawaii. That's wrong. Next. Question 2. Will public input be stifled during a special session? Yes. Abercrombie's answer. The issue has been discussed at length within and without the legislature. The same constitutional and legal requirements still must be met during a special session, as well as the House and Senate internal rules, both of which require at least one public hearing before a bill is passed. Holding a special session does not allow a bill to sidestep the requirements of the legislative process. Next. Really, next. Same-sex marriage has not been discussed within recent years here in Hawaii. We've had civil unions. That is not same-sex marriage. Next. 5 days is the minimum amount of time granted to study the bill in this special session, and some of the legislators may not yet have even read the bill. So he's trying to say, you know, we already understand this. We've been doing this for 20 years, since 96, 98, when marriage has been discussed. It's already taken, we understand. They haven't looked at it recently. They have not. And this bill hasn't even been released yet. If you look at the bill that's in the handout, there's no Senate or House, and there's no number for the bill. What we have is just a draft bill. That means that we don't even know what the actual bill is going to say yet. They're trying to say that, you know, we already understand. The bill's not even out yet. Definitely not out for the public. How are we supposed to understand if we can't even see what it says? Next. Other countries and states are still only just beginning to understand the effect same-sex marriage has had on society. You know, they're trying to say, you know, it's already taken care of, we understand, we know what's going on. How do you know what's going on? Other states and other countries are the only way we can see how same-sex marriage has affected society in any way. And it's taken them the past 10 to 15 years to just now begin understanding those effects on society. How are they trying to say that we know what's going to happen? They understand. When they are just learning about it, we're not going to see it until the long-term effects 10 to 15 years down the road. And, you know, again, they're trying to say, we already know. You're not going to see the ramifications right away. Next. Question 3. I've heard that the legislature does not have enough votes to call themselves into a special session, but they might have enough votes to pass a bill. Why did the governor wait until now to call for a special session? Governor Abercrombie's answer. Although the governor has the authority to call a special session, for the special session to be meaningful, the legislature needs to be engaged and have the votes to pass a bill. The best approach is a collaborative one. The community's input was taken into consideration, and the administration has been working together with members of the legislature and legislative staff to craft a measure that covers all aspects of the issue at hand. This will allow the legislature to focus on the vote rather than the process. Next. What? Next. This is the first time that the governor has unilaterally called for a special session. Next. The governor did not consult with the legislature to choose the dates for the special session. Next. The governor did not ask the Senate President or the Speaker in regards concerning this bill. Next. The governor believes that he has the votes. He would not have called for a special session costing $35,000 to $40,000 of Hawaii's taxpayer money if he did not think he had the votes for this special session. And if he does have the votes, which he feels that he doesn't need to listen to you. He doesn't need to listen to me. He doesn't need to listen to the public and their concerns if the votes are secured. That's what they're counting on. Next. He says he wants them to focus on the bill rather than the process. Again, the bill's not even out yet. How are they supposed to focus on it in 5 days, what usually takes them 4 to 5 months? Unfortunately, our legislators, as well as the general public, are being misled by the bill and how it will diminish First Amendment freedoms, religious freedoms. That's what we are just reading. So a lot of people are looking at it and they think that they understand this bill. They don't understand how it's going to affect, and they're trying to just have them focus on the bill, which they can't, instead of the process. The process is what we're trying to address. Next. Media has also been trying to distract to the issues regarding the process. Just my personal thoughts, the media has not been helping us at all. The newspapers, the local news, they have not been helping us. They're actually for this bill, and that's why they're trying to distract people to not understand how it's going to affect us. Next. Are things being rushed? Shouldn't a bill like this be vetted more thoroughly? Governor Abercrombie's answer. This is an issue that has faced our state since 1993. Over the years, various proposals have been considered. In the wake of 2 recent United States Supreme Court decisions, now is an appropriate time to conclude this issue. The measure that we are asking the legislature to consider now is based on a bill that was introduced in the legislature this past session, Senate Bill number 1369, which has been updated. Additionally, the State Attorney General has been working closely with members of the legislature as well as a number of staff for several weeks to craft this bill. The next step in the vetting process is for the measure to go through the legislative process, including public hearings. The bill includes several provisions that are currently in the Civil Unions Bill that were already vetted by the legislature when the Civil Unions Bill was passed. So, he says, the measure that we are asking the legislature to consider is based on Senate Bill number 1369. Next. Half of a truth. Next. Senate Bill number 1369 was introduced this year during regular session. It never received a single hearing. Now, a hearing is when it's presented to the committees and people can bear testimony or anything or to address their concerns. It never received a hearing. He's trying to say that, this is based on a bill that we've already discussed earlier this year. It was never discussed. Next. There are only 2 hearings, as far as we've been told, 2 opportunities to voice your opinions. That will be next week on the 28th at the committee hearings, which will be at the beginning of the standard session. This limits the amount of people who can testify, and it limits the amount of time that they have to testify. Because there are going to be so many people rushing in to go in here and have their voice heard, there's going to be thousands of people trying to get a chance to bear their testimony. Because there will be so many, they are going to limit you down to 1 to 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to explain all of your concerns, all of your feelings about this bill. 1 minute only, then out of the way, on to the next one. Thank you, we've considered your thoughts. We'll keep that in our mind as we continue with the special session. Next. Question number 5. If a bill was introduced this past session but did not receive a public hearing, what makes things different now? Governor Abercrombie's response. One of the most significant developments was a U.S. Supreme Court decision issued on June 26, 2013. After the legislative session ended, that found a portion of the Federal Defense of Marriage Act unlawfully discriminated against married same-sex couples by prohibiting the federal government from recognizing those marriages and by denying federal benefits and protection to those couples. So what makes things different now? The ruling by the Supreme Court. This is our chance. We can do something about this because they don't get those federal benefits. They do. They can. They have that available to them. Next. Well, really, next. Recent ruling by the Supreme Court does not require states to approve same-sex marriage. Like I said, none of the other states are rushing into a special session It's telling people that they need to redefine marriage for them to get those benefits. Next. The Defense Against Marriage Act now means that if a state recognizes same-sex marriage, then the federal government will too. So because because of the ruling of the Defense of Marriage Act being unconstitutional, they're trying to say that, it needs to be changed. Because of the ruling, we need to give them those benefits. When in fact, because of the ruling, they now get those benefits. So they're trying to say because of the ruling, we need to change it. But because of the ruling, they had it. That was the change. Next. When civil unions were passed in 2011, our local government knew that the Defense of Marriage Act would restrict federal benefits to same-sex couples. So when they passed the law in 2011, they already knew that same-sex couples would be restricted from receiving those federal benefits. Why are they trying to change it now? Abercrombie already passed this bill, and they knew that they wouldn't get those benefits. What's the difference now? Why are they trying to change it? Next. Our marriage law currently does not conflict with the Supreme Court ruling. Next. Next. Civil unions law provides the same rights and benefits of marriage to same-sex couples, except the use of the term marriage. Next. Our legislature proposed a bill that, for the purpose of federal benefits, civil unions would be recognized as marriage without redefining marriage. So earlier this year, someone presented a bill and said, you know what, let's give them those benefits without changing the definition of marriage. So it was proposed, let's give them those benefits. Guess what happened to that bill? Did not pass. This bill was shot down in the legislative sessions. Shot down. So they tried to give them the benefits earlier this year, before the Supreme Court ruling, and it was shot down. Now they're trying to say, we do want those benefits, but we want it our way. Next. Nothing prevents the federal government from recognizing the civil unions partnership. We just said. Next. Question 6. If a special session is called on October 28th, next week Monday, why can't it wait until the regular session begins in January? We're only 2 months away. Why can't it just wait? Abercrombie's response. Besides the U.S. Supreme Court decision on the Defense Against Marriage Act, other rulings and decisions have since been issued. On August 29th, the United States Department of Treasury and the Internal Revenue Service ruled that same-sex couples legally married in jurisdictions that recognize their marriages will be treated as married for federal tax purposes. This ruling applies regardless of whether the couple lives in a jurisdiction that recognizes same-sex marriage. So like I said, if you're married in another state, same-sex, you're married, you go to another state that doesn't recognize that, you still get the federal benefits. Additionally, the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Pentagon have both recently announced that they would treat same-sex marriages equal to opposite-sex marriages for purpose of federal benefits, including health care, housing, family separation allowance, and veterans benefits. Some of these benefits are expected to be applicable on October 1st. So all those benefits, again, currently available to them. Passage of a marriage equity bill this year will allow same-sex couples who enter into a marriage in the 2013 tax year to take advantage of certain tax benefits and file jointly, both federally and for Hawaii state tax purposes, as well as take advantage of a host of other federal benefits. So back to the tax thing. Remember those statistics. Less than 1/5 of 1% applied in the course of 3 years. In the next 7 months, there will be a lot less than that. And they're trying to pass this bill for the benefit of a really, really tiny minority and at the cost of a huge majority of people. The ramifications of this bill are really going to be really big and detrimental, and people aren't going to understand that until a lot of time has passed. Oh yeah, it's so tax benefits and filed jointly. How many of you guys keep up with Obamacare? No? You. Okay. So, if you guys don't know, this is a little offshoot, but filing jointly on your tax benefits under Obamacare, which will probably come to pass in years to come, you actually receive a lot less benefits and pay a lot more. They're actually trying to promote it to be better to file alone and single. So they're trying to say that, file jointly for the tax purposes, it's actually going to turn into a bad thing in a couple of years. Next. Is this really what we want? Next. If this bill passes, it will become law on November 18th, according to the current wording of the bill. Next. Rushing this process does injustice to both the proponents and opponents of this bill. They can't look at the facts or the concerns of either side by rushing it in 5 days. Next. Can this issue truly be fairly addressed in 5 days? Absolutely not. Next. Having the law become active so soon leaves little time to determine how the law is to be interpreted by judges. So they're trying to pass it by November 2nd. And in just 15 days, they would have it become law. And that leaves very little time for the judges to determine, how are we going to apply this if a lawsuit comes up. Next. Next. What if a lawsuit is filed after the bill is enacted? Abercrombie's response: any piece of legislation is subject to legal scrutiny after a bill becomes law. The best we can do is to do our due diligence and engage in a thorough discussion to build strong legislation that will likely withstand a legal challenge. Over the last month, attorneys for the legislature and the Attorney General's office have been engaged in a collaborative process of subjecting the draft marriage equity bill to rigorous legal analysis and revision to ensure that the bill is constitutionally sound. So the best we can do is to do our due diligence and engage in a thorough discussion. 5 days. That's a thorough discussion, they're saying, compared to 5 months. And will likely withstand a legal challenge. Next. Concerns. Withstand a legal challenge for who exactly? Talk about what we went over already. The religious exemptions. Will this bill be able to withstand a legal challenge for any religious entities, religious groups? No. Next. If a lawsuit is filed, the government may choose not to defend it. So if anyone knows about the recent Jackson case here in Honolulu, a lesbian couple went to a bed and breakfast, and respectfully, the owner said, you know what, sorry, we don't agree with that lifestyle, but let's refer you to our friend down the road, they'll be happy to take you in. The government, they sued them, and the government here in Hawaii decided not to defend the marriage law as being man and woman, and instead they were sued for discrimination, and they were defeated, and they had to close their bed and breakfast. Next. Religious exemptions will be challenged by the same supporters of the governor's bill. So the people who are writing this bill, the people who are writing the religious exemptions, they will be challenging the exemptions that they wrote to go against it. So the people who are acting to promote the bill are prepared to tear it down. Next. Opposition to the bill was not initially consulted in the drafting of the bill, and most of them are not attorneys or have much legislative experience. So when they were writing this bill, they weren't going around to any church pastors or anyone saying, what do you think should be in the bill? How can we better protect you guys? They absolutely did not go. And by the time that they did, the bill was already written and it was already thought through. And a lot of the people who are pastors in churches, they're not attorneys. They don't have legislative experience. They don't know how to properly word protections for themselves in the bill. Next. All right, next. The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights is to ensure that religious liberties are not encroached by the government. The religious exemptions are to be upheld or voided by the courts. So we're talking about the First Amendment right, the right to the freedom of religion. Next. Imagine a priest or minister having to choose between following his faith or facing a lawsuit. You're either going to have to hold by what you believe to be true and deny the service, or you're going to get sued, and we're going to sue you for everything we can. Next. People of faith need equal protections too. I sat down with my legislator and I talked with him, and what he kept stressing, there needs to be equal protections for the gay community. They need to be equal protections. Religious communities need exemptions too. The wording of this bill and the bill in a lot of the other states completely ignores religious individuals. By doing that, they ignore the fact that religion and churches are made up of religious individuals. Just like how the gay community is made up of gay individuals. They're not protecting individuals. Next. The First Amendment was decided with a 9-0 vote. It passed. Founding Fathers passed the First Amendment unanimously deciding that you should be free to follow your beliefs. Next. That's the right to freedom to believe. Next. Question 10, last question. Why is this issue subject to legislation instead of a direct vote by the people? Abercrombie's response. There are 2 reasons why marriage equity is properly addressed by the Hawaii State Legislature instead of by a direct vote by the people. First, Hawaii does not have an initiative process, which is typically a process that allows the people to place a new law or constitutional amendment on the ballot by petition. which requires collecting a certain number of signatures of citizens of the state. Under the Hawaii State Constitution, changes to our state's laws can be made only by the elected representatives in the Hawaii State Legislature. It is therefore not possible to make major changes to Hawaii law without involving the legislature on this or any other topic. Second, the Hawaii State Constitution was already amended in '98 by a majority of votes of the people of the Hawaii electorate to give the legislature the discretion to limit marriage to one man and one woman. This provision specifically confirms that any change to the marriage law after '98 would be made by the legislature. The electorate's purpose in amending the Constitution in this matter was to give the legislature the power and discretion to amend the law to provide for marriage equity. Thanks. So, translation, that first section, the legislature has to do this. Next. Abercrombie is saying, you can't do anything to change the law even if you wanted to. The legislature has to do it. He's saying we can't do anything about it. We can have more hearings and more concerns addressed in a regular session. That's what we can have. That's what we should have. Next. So the exact wording in the '98 Constitutional Amendment is that the power is reserved to define marriage as between a man and a woman. So he's saying that in '98, we passed a constitutional amendment. The legislature has the power to define marriage. The legislature has the power to reserve marriage as a man and a woman, not to change it any way they please. Next. Next. So what now? Where do we stand? I'm going to read a message to you guys. Can you scroll out something? So this is from our church. Dear brothers and sisters, over the last several weeks we have received many questions about the church's stance on marriage and religious freedom protections as the Hawaii legislature prepares to meet in a special session later this month. The church's position in relation to same-sex marriage is unchanged. The church is opposed to the proposed legislation in Hawaii. There are two reasons for our opposition. First, it attempts to redefine marriage. The church is firm in its belief that marriage is, as the union of a man and a woman, is essential to the well-being of children, families, and society. Second, the protections offered in the current draft are completely inadequate to safeguard constitutionally guaranteed religious freedoms. Traditional marriage and religious liberty are among the most cherished and historical vital elements of society, and both deserve careful protection. The church's opposition to this legislation does not reduce our regard for all children of God, including individuals who choose to live by other values. It does confirm our conviction that traditional marriage and robust protections for religious freedoms are fundamental to successful families and a strong society. Church leaders have repeatedly taught that members should be actively engaged in important causes that will affect our communities and our families. This legislation will directly affect both, and as your stake presidency, we believe it is time to put this teaching into action. We urge you to educate yourselves on these matters and let your voice be heard through the democratic process. We encourage you to call, write, and visit your elected representatives to let them know where you stand. Join your voices with others in organizations who share your views. As you do these things, we remind you to conduct yourselves as one who strives to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. Be respectful and considerate to all, even those who disagree with you. We pray that the Lord will bless you always. Sincerely, 3 of our stake presidents here on island. I'll tell you right now about my experience. I've had good friends yell at me, cuss me out, and just straight up end the friendship and say, you know what, can't believe you're like this. You hate me, you think I'm not equal to you, this and that, just straight up curse me out and just be done with it. Several friends. I work with a lot of gay people with my job, and just from school, and I know them, they're my friends. I know that we had a good relationship and it's just gone in a matter of seconds. On the other hand, I've had other people who say, you know what, I'm for gay marriage, but just listening to you talk respectfully and then seeing the point of view how religious exemptions are being stifled, you know what, I think this bill is not right. I'm for gay marriage, but I think this bill is not the way to do it. We need to be respectful and understand that it's not their intention. We should not just discount them and say that their intentions are to hurt religious freedoms or to take away from the churches. That would be as ignorant as them saying that, you know, you're a religious bigot and that you don't know anything about us, you don't care about us. We have to get rid of the ignorance, have respect, educate yourself on as much as you can, and teach the facts and why this is wrong and why this bill should not be passed. So what now? We have had a group of individuals go and help with doing all kinds of stuff, calling the right people, calling other people, just going around and trying to get involved in the best way they can. They find about the meetings, they find out about who's doing what. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and they're just getting involved. You can do something, you can do anything. And you can really make a difference. Before, when this bill first started, everyone was saying it was a slam dunk. There's no way you can beat this bill. There's no way you're going to win. At the last meeting I went to, we're really close. We're really, really close to stopping them. The pressure needs to be kept up against the legislators to have them know that this bill is going to do a lot more damage than any benefits they claim it's going to have on society. This is taken out of the Star Advertiser, and right there is a handsome individual. We don't know who he is, but we hear he's in our group, and he made the paper. So, you know, your action will go a long way by just getting involved and doing something. Any questions? Yes? Oh.
Why aren't the legislatures the ones who are voting? Why isn't pressure put on them that they're going about voting according to their own values, and they're not representing the public? How come you know, they don't follow that old adage by, I think, Harry Truman, kick the bums out?
I don't understand your question.
Well, why isn't more pressure put on the
ones that are voting yes or the ones that are voting no?
The ones that are voting for it, that they don't
For the
seem to
bill.
really represent the public?
They believe that they are representing the public. There are many people, in fact, who are for this bill. And they've been keeping up and organizing for this back since January. We're really late to the game. We're really late to have our voices heard and to get prepared and talk to our legislators. But they're starting to hear it, and they're starting to get that understanding. The pressure is being put on them.
But is that true, though, that they represent those who want the bill?
They represent those that want the bill. As far as the legislators are concerned, they will act according to, as far as they know about their constituents, as well as acting upon their individual beliefs and concerns. So it's a mixture of both their personal beliefs and what they've heard from their constituents. What I've heard is that, or what I've researched and found out, is that the opposition, what they're doing is they're going around door to door or wherever there are people frequenting, and they're asking them, hey, how do you feel about same-sex marriage? And if they say no, they're like, okay, bye, have a nice day. If they say yes, they bust out their phone right there. Here, call your legislator. Talk to him, let him know. So without any further facts or understanding of the bill, they're having people vote yes. These people don't understand. They're unaware of the ramifications. They're unaware of the wording of the bill, but they're getting the votes. So as far as the legislators know, they've been getting it. They've been told that people want this bill.
But that's not a very accurate way to determine what the population
It's not an accurate way, but it's an effective way. That's what the opposition is doing.
Aren't they getting away with their own viewpoint rather than really, you don't really have evidence to show that they really support the majority of the population?
That is true. I agree with you completely. However, because of how fast this is going through, there's no time for them to really determine or more action to be made. And that's why we're trying to get as many people aware as possible so that they will take action. Because we just need more people to become aware and more people to talk to our legislators. Otherwise, this bill may be passed.
There's no real threat for them. There has been no pressure put on them.
On the legislators?
Yeah, because
There have been several pressures. A lot of religious groups are threatening. If you don't, if you take away our religious freedoms, we're going to put someone to run against you. Next year is general elections. So, personal thoughts. Abercrombie is definitely on his own personal agenda. He made a promise to the gay community, and he's trying to rush this promise, rushed his answer to fulfill that promise with this special session. limiting the voice of the people. That's what I think you're talking about. They are limiting the voice of the people with this special session. Joe?
What are some ways people can get the word out and get community to call their legislators, and what's their opinion?
Some groups, some people have made signs, and there's Hawaii Family Advocates. If you go onto their website, you can get connected to see how you can get connected with them, or how you can write your letter of response to your legislators. There's a lot of ways. You just get connected with the right groups. I hear that some group has a pretty prominent Facebook group. There's a lot of people who are involved. Anyone else?
Well, who's sponsoring that rally on the 28th?
The rally on the 28th is sponsored by Hawaii Family Advocates. It will be Hawaii Family Advocates. Hawaii Family Forums and Hawaii Family Advocates have been kind of the spearhead in this going against this bill. Joe?
I understand there's a lot of sign waving going around in different areas. Where can people find out about how to get involved with that, along with the times and locations?
Right. Going on to Hawaii Family Advocates, and you don't have to search for it on the page yourself. You can find where and how and when. You just need to get connected with the right people.
I
Yes.
received an email regarding that same subject yesterday. So I received an email yesterday regarding that subject, and I have dates and times and where, which I'd be happy to give that information to you before I leave.
Great.
She has that information. James. James has that information as well. Any other questions, concerns? No? Yes?
Is anyone going out and get petition signs? Because that, I mean, when you look at signatures, you have a very small window. Even the people that go to a rally on the 28th, only so many people can go there. But if you put your actions on a signed petition, wouldn't that hold value too?
Right now, there is an online petition. If you go on to, there's a Facebook group that someone should have information for. They have posted their online petition that you can sign, and that's actually been promoted and been going around only recently, though. Honora?
I think it's kind of more effective if you talk to your legislators, because your representatives are voted by they're voted into office by their people, you know. And so like when they look at a petition, it's hard to tell where it came from. You know, anybody could have signed it. Anyone from all over the world, you know, could have signed it. You know, and so it doesn't really matter as much to them. But what matters is like registered voters in their area, because you know I think like they're, even if they I don't know, regardless of how they feel, I guess, you know, like if they think they're gonna be voted out of office, you know, like they might not want to.
Right, so the target is the legislators in the House. The Senate has been deemed a lost cause, but pressure has been put up against them by those that are opposed to this bill. But the legislators are where a lot of the focus is being pushed to get them to vote no for this. And the reason being is that, kind of what Honora was saying, with a petition, it's really hard for them to take that personally, you know, because there's just a lot of people signing, a lot of people for this cause. There's a lot of people that go against it, there's a lot of people that go for it. Just having that petition might not necessarily mean much to them. But speaking to your legislator directly, writing them a letter, giving them a phone call, planning to meet up with them. My legislator came to my house to talk. Planning to meet up with them, any of that, that's really personal, and they will get the feel that it's their constituent that they're dealing with. So legislators look at the numbers. If X amount of people call me and tell me to vote no, then that's X amount of people to vote for me next term because I did good. Or that's X amount of people to vote against me because I let them down. The legislators will never vote to get pushed out of office. They want to be there. They want to be reelected for the next term. So if they get enough pressure from their constituents, then they will vote according to the general public.
Wow, how about a big hand for Killa? I never realized how knowledgeable Killa is about this bill, and thank you so much for all the information and explanation you gave. And you know what, I'm thinking, I'm going to give the mic to Susan so she can tell us